Hello, thanks for joining me. Now, I've just fitted a DNA air filter to the bike. If you stick with me, I'll let you know my thoughts. First of all, just a quick thank you. Can I just thank everybody who's subscribed, thank everybody who's had any interaction with the channel whatsoever, whether that be a thumbs up or a comment, or indeed whether you've sent me photographs. I've got a few photographs ready to go on quite soon, so keep an eye out for them. What do you want? Hey, go on, sling your hook. Goodness me. Now, my thoughts on the DNA air filter. At the moment, as you can see, the bike's ticking over. I've fitted this DNA air filter and I've got to let it run for 10 to 15 minutes so that the ECU calibrates the engine properly, so I believe. So that's what's happening at the moment. But a word on, normally I really wouldn't undertake such a task. To be honest, if I'd wanted a bike with a bit more power, I'd just probably get one at the buying stage. I've never really got a tuner and a fettler to that degree, because I've always thought that, manufacturers have got sort of infinitely more money than me, and they've got whole departments that are sort of dedicated to producing these bikes for a given market, and that meets all the regulations that might be enforced in that particular market. And I bought my little Enfield knowing full well that it was a relatively low power machine. But at that time, I've had me 100 brake horsepower plus rocket ships, and I think now it's sort of the perfect bike for me now. It wasn't, so I wasn't really considering any upgrades, at least not in relation to upgrading the performance. Now, since I've got involved with my little Royal Enfield, I've seen that numerous people, both on YouTube and elsewhere, seem to suggest that a DNA air filter is a good little modification that's proven to give your little bike a little bit more performance in the mid-range. And so I thought, I was just thinking about giving it a go. But it would seem to me that most people seem to go down the route of also fitting a free flow exhaust as part of the process. And that does seem to make sense to me, that if you were sort of enhancing the intake of the engine, then it could only help the performance to fit the exhaust to sort that end of it out as well. So as I mentioned, it was just something that I was thinking of doing, and that would probably been as far as it would have gone, just the thought, because I'm quite happy with the power output of the little bike as it is. It suits my needs perfectly. But then I started to think, well, the issue, at least in my mind, is that the manufacturers are bound by certain sort of cost implications. They've got to make products down to a price, they've got to make a profit at the end of the day, and they have to fit stuff like catalytic converters to meet statutory laws to ensure that they can sell the bikes in any given market. And we all know that these can and do blunt performance somewhat. Now, so I do still wonder whether it's worthwhile. I don't really want to pump more, nasty chemicals into the atmosphere than I have to. And for me, and I may be a minority in this, but I don't really want to be riding up and down on an unnecessary loud motorcycle. So it was just something that I was considering. I was watching other YouTubers and other people and reading about people who've made these modifications, and I was just wondering whether it was worthwhile, because any money I spent on it, wouldn't I have just spent that on a bigger, more powerful bike if that's what I'd wanted? But then, as I mentioned in a previous vlog, I had a conversation with my mate who asked me what I was riding. And essentially, he works for an exhaust company, and he offered me a complete free flow stainless steel exhaust system Now, I reckon one of these is about £200 to £300. And he wanted me just to appraise it and to allow him to use my bike as a glamour model, posing for his marketing material. That was my end of the bargain, if you like. And he said, just have it, fit it, and assess it and report back, you know. So that's where we are. So I thought, well, given that I'm getting the second part of the equation essentially for nothing, I thought, well, you know, I'll put a DNA filter on, and then I've done both parts. And the situation we're in now is that the DNA filter is on the bike, it's fitted, and I'm going for a ride on it. So having decided that with some help from him I was going to go down this route, I bought this DNA filter. Now I don't propose to go into massive detail about what a DNA filter is. If you're watching this, I'm sure you know what it is. I would say I'm not going to do a fitting video, there's no point. I mean, let's face it, it's 3 screws and replace the old air filter, so it takes 5 minutes. It's very easy to fit. I would say it cost the best part of £100 just for the filter. So if you were, I'm not sure it's entirely worth, it certainly isn't worth that on sort of cost grounds, I don't think, because although they say, well, it'll last the life of the bike and you'll never have to fit another filter. I mean, what does an ordinary air filter cost? I worked it out quickly, that they're about £10, they're less than £10 an air filter is, just on a quick glance on eBay. And they need replacing every year. So you're good for sort of, you know, every year or 6,000 miles. So to get your money back on the DNA filter, you've got to keep the bike 10 years and have 10 air filters. And if you were doing no mileage, let's face it, you wouldn't necessarily change it every 6,000 miles or annually, particularly in the UK where it's not that dusty, is it? So it's not really viable on cost grounds, but anyway, it's on the bike now, and what I can say straight away is that when it was ticking over, there was no noticeable extra noise. It's still got the standard exhaust on at the moment, of course, but there's no, you can't tell it's on, to my ear at least. Other people might say different, but to my ear, at tick over, there was no difference. The difference did come when the 15 minutes of idling was up. Hopefully the ECU had recalibrated itself, and you know, I plucked up the courage to rev it. Unfortunately, I don't have any sort of footage of that, but I do, listening to other YouTubers' vlogs, when they rev these bikes, it's difficult on YouTube to tell the actual noise, but what I can report is it definitely makes more of an induction roar than the stock air filter, so it must be doing something with it. Now on my particular bike, what I did was I fitted the DNA air filter, and I did, and a lot of people don't, put back the document holder on the outside. Quite why, I'm not sure, but I thought there was enough space behind it for the air to still get in. Anyway, when you rev it, when you're riding it, that is undoubtedly more of an induction roar. I quite like it, I don't mind it, and bear in mind what I said, I don't want to be a noisy boy riding up and down, you know, making lots of noise. That's not what I'm about. But it does make a little bit more of a noise for sure. Now, I was going to fit them both together, both do the air filter and the exhaust, but I thought, well, it's simple enough just to stick the air filter on and people up, because then I wouldn't have any idea. If I put them both on together, I wouldn't know which one was making most difference. So I thought, well, I'll pop the air filter on first because it was only 3 screws, excuse me, and I'll go for a little tickle round and see what difference it makes. Now, to my mind, does it make a difference? Yes, it does. My bike is virtually running now. I'm quite happy, although I'm still not going to really push it, but In the mid-range, and that's where it counts, because we all know it's not going to improve the top end speed of the bike, but in the mid-range, and I'm pretty sure I was trying to think, well, is it just the induction roar that makes you think you're going a bit quicker, or does it feel any different? I would say it feels a little bit smoother, and I would say it picks up a little bit quicker, but I would also say it's marginal. It's not massive. This and this alone is not going to turn your Enfield into a fire-breathing dragon. It's not going to turn it into a Hayabusa. What it does is it gives a very small marginal increase to the mid-range. You could argue that it's barely discernible, but I'm pretty sure that it is there, and I don't think it's like the placebo effect. It's not wishful thinking. It is slightly better, but it's up for you to decide whether it's worthwhile. It hasn't transformed the bike. It's not, when I open it up, it's not pulling my arms off. It's not snapping my neck in two. It's just, it feels slightly smoother and slightly quicker in the mid-range, but it's marginal. It's only a little bit. I think Hitchcock's have got a video on YouTube, which I'd encourage you to go and look at, which I think it gives an increase of, they reckon, between sort of 5 and 10%. And the 10% may be at the top of the rev range, and maybe because my bike isn't quite running yet, I haven't really fully explored that. So maybe in the fullness of time. But at the moment, there is a little marginal increase in performance. There's certainly an increase in the noise. And of course, this might be enhanced once I get the exhaust on, which will be the next one, which will be in the next vid. So if you want to see how we go on with that, you'll have to tune into that one, because that'll be on the next one. And again, I'm not going to do a fitting video or anything like that, because at the end of the day, it's fitting an exhaust. It's taking a few bolts. It's taking the old one off and putting the new one on. Now then, I find myself up here at the Roaches. I'll just put an arrow on the screen here, because what I'm pointing to there, and I did a video on this when I had my Royal Enfield Interceptor, but I was just trying this DNA air filter and I passed it again, and I just thought I'd pass it on. This is the Roaches, just north of Leek on the Buxton Road. And in the 1940s, I'll just tell you a little story about this. In the 1940s, there was a Junkers bomber, a few Junkers bombers who'd bombed Liverpool, and one of them was hit by anti-aircraft fire or a night fighter and was actually crashed here, just what we're looking at here now. Now, it crashed just down the valley to our left, which I'm sort of panning down to. But just before it crashed, one of the young men in the bomber jumped out trying to save his life. And sadly, he died when he hit the ground. And then half a mile up there, the plane came to rest. But the interesting thing was, shortly after the war, his mum visited and planted a rhododendron bush where he jumped out. As I say, I'll put the arrow on it. That was the rhododendron bush that his mum planted to mark the spot where her son had died, sadly. If you wanted to see a little bit more about that, if you look at me I haven't got much of a back catalogue exactly, but I did have a Royal Enfield Interceptor, and I did a bit more of an in-depth thing on that. If you looked at my previous videos, you're sure to find it, and that will explain the story. It's quite interesting, really. They're still the lads who were killed were buried in Cannock Chase. And interestingly, the father of one of the lads, who, I'll tell you his name in the other video, I can't remember it now, was involved in an assassination plot to kill Hitler in the war, and I believe he was put to death by the Nazis. Anyway, it was just a thought that came in while I was riding around. We're here for the DNA filter, but this is how my mind works. Butterfly brain, my mum used to say, and she was absolutely bang on. So there you go. That's just my thoughts on the DNA air filter. It's very easy to fit. It does make me, to simplify it, and I've already touched on it. It gives you a bit more of an induction roar that you can't miss, but I couldn't tell any difference at tick over. Maybe that's just me. And in the riding it, I think, I don't know what you think, let me know, but put it in a comment below whether you think it makes a vast difference or no difference whatsoever. In use, in normal use with the standard exhaust on, there is a tiny bit of difference. I'm sure it's there. I do think it runs a little bit better. I don't think I'm trying to convince myself of that just because I've bought it. I'm hoping that it increases further once the exhaust is on, which will be the next task. So we'll go through that when I get it. Hopefully I'll have some sound then from the bike. But I just thought, well, I'll have a little ride out and we'll have a little chat about this DNA exhaust. So I don't know what you think. Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Now, if you do have any comments, put them below. Give us a like. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't done already. Thank you for those that have already. That's marvellous. Really good to see your comments. I am replying to all of them. I love getting them, and I love getting your photos from all over the world. And if you have sent me a photo, just be patient with me. They'll be on very, very, very soon. So again, thanks for watching. Make sure you watch out for those potholes and all them lunatic drivers that are out there. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye.